Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Maybe nothing shows the disconnect in values and priorities and objectives. Nothing shows the disconnect between the elites, the owners and controllers of global financialized capital, the elites, and the general public, more than the difference between social media and mainstream media. The mainstream media narrative, of course, on the current conflict in Gaza and Palestine and Israel, the mainstream media narrative, of course, is all purely pro-Israeli propaganda. No one is talking about the devastation in Gaza for years, for decades now. The endless brutality of the Zionists against the people of Palestine, the people of the West Bank, the people of Gaza, the people of the occupied territories. No one talks about that. The mainstream media never talks about that. They'll tell you about, some Israeli grandmother, or some Israeli civilian, so-called, who's been hurt or who was killed or who was mistreated or something like this in the midst of armed conflict. They'll tell you about that, but they won't tell you about the grandmothers who were shot in the head by the Israelis, the grandchildren who were shot in the head, the pregnant women at checkpoints who were shot or who die trying to deliver their children because they won't be allowed into a hospital, on and on and on. The suffering of the people of Gaza is completely acceptable to the mainstream. It's completely acceptable to the elites. It's completely acceptable to the owners and controllers of global financialized capital. But it's not acceptable to the populations of the world. It's not acceptable to the public. And you can see the difference in social media because they have to control the narrative so rigidly, so strictly, because if any element of the truth is conveyed to the public, well, the public is going to take the side of the Palestinians every time. The Israelis are not even likable people, They're not even likable. Forget about how brutal and savage they are. Forget about that. Just as people, they're obnoxious, they're rude, they're crass, they have no manners. And you compare that to the Palestinians. You can't find a Palestinian who isn't kind. You can't find a Palestinian who isn't decent. You can't find a Palestinian who doesn't want peace. All they're asking for is to stop abusing us, is to stop killing us, is to stop torturing us, is to stop brutalizing us. That's all they ask. So the phenomenon of social media has been incredibly helpful to the Palestinian cause because it's uncontrolled narrative. It's news and information without narrative. It's just facts on the ground. It's people telling you what's really going on from their own mobile phone cameras, talking to people, talking to actual people, conveying the facts as they actually are with no narrative, with no controlled propaganda. They have to control the propaganda because that's the only way they can get anyone on the side of Israel, because it's completely against human nature to support what Israel does and to support what Israel is. It's completely against human nature. I mean, they can put on TikTok, the Israelis try, they try to win over social media, but it's a lost cause because, you can put on your Israeli women in their IDF uniforms twerking on TikTok and think that that's going to win people over. You think that you show some beautiful Israeli woman dancing in her IDF uniform on TikTok. You think that that's going to win people over. And that just shows how disconnected you are from human beings and from real human feeling. And you'll see, if you see any of these videos by Israelis who are trying to win over public opinion, you'll see in the comment section, it's an absolute flood of condemnation of Israel by just people from all around the world. It's not people whose name is Abdullah. It's not people whose name is Muhammad. It's people whose name is Eduardo. It's people whose name is Zhang. It's people whose name is, Park Lin Ho or whatever, from all around the world. People whose name is O'Malley, people whose name is Johnson, people all around the world. It's immediate, and it's a flood, an absolute avalanche of condemnation every time the Israelis try to put something, some sort of a positive spin and make some kind of a crass PR move to try to win over popular support, because you're not fooling the people. And you'll see that there's this huge gap, a huge chasm of reality between what the mainstream media shows and what's actually happening. And if you want to see what's actually happening, you have to go to social media, and you can't control that. And this is a very big problem for the Israelis, for Zionism. And it's even a problem for Israelis in Israel, who have themselves been propagandized, who have themselves been indoctrinated, and who have themselves been victimized mentally, intellectually, by the controlled narrative. Now they are also seeing things that they never saw before, even though it's happening just a few miles away, just a few kilometers down the road on the other side of the wall. Many of them actually don't know and don't understand the brutality of their own government, and they're seeing it now. And this is why Zionism, as I've said before, and I'll keep saying, Zionism is on its last legs. It can't survive. And look, this current conflict right now exposes the absolute hollowness of the Zionist ideology. Look at Netanyahu, Mr. Hardline, Mr. Security, Mr. Tough Guy, taking a tough stance on the Palestinians, and he's going to protect Israel. He's going to protect the Israelis. That's been his whole shtick from the beginning, that he's the tough one. He's the one who knows how to deal with the so-called terrorists in Gaza, the so-called Hamas terrorists, and so on. Well, look what happened. According to his own government, they've admitted that this was a intelligence failure on the part of the Israelis, that's what allowed the Hamas fighters to infiltrate into Israel. Well, that's not an intelligence failure that happened on that day. This operation has to have been months, if not years, in the planning. So that's an intelligence failure over many days, over every day for the last several months, if not for the last several years, where they were not able to pick up on the plans that were being made by Hamas. Not to mention the fact that somehow they weren't able to pick up on the fact that weapons are being delivered to Hamas, training was being provided to Hamas. They weren't able to pick up on any of that. And you're supposed to be Mr. Security. You're supposed to be Mr. Tough Guy. You're supposed to be Mr. Hardline Zionist. But you have completely failed to deliver, which means that it was all hollow from the beginning. It's all just words. It's all just talk. Because you know perfectly well that you've never been in danger, that the Palestinians never really posed a threat to you, that Hamas never really posed a threat to you. Your whole shtick about the danger being posed by Hamas, you knew it was fake when you were saying it, and you treated it as fake all along, that you never really took security procedures or security precautions. Who knows, this Iron Dome and your so-called surveillance and security all along the wall, that may be like one of those artificial, one of those fake CCTV cameras that they put in shops just to make people think that there's a camera going there, but it doesn't record anything. It doesn't even have any film in it. It's not even connected, because it's all a lie. It's all a joke. It's all just a way to make money. It's all just a way to get funding. And when you get the funding, you don't even use it for what you say you're going to use it for, apparently. Because your systems don't work, your intelligence doesn't work, your Iron Dome doesn't work, your surveillance doesn't work, and your soldiers surrender in their hundreds when they're confronted with someone in actual combat. I mean, the truth of the matter is, the IDF, when's the last time they were actually in combat with anyone who fights back? They don't know how to fight. They don't have any experience in fighting. All they know how to do is to fly a drone or to drop missiles from a Apache helicopter. And they're supposedly precision-guided missiles that blow up an entire apartment block. That's precision by the Israeli definition, and apparently by the American definition. This is exposing how far the divide is between really the inhuman elite, the inhuman owners and controllers of global financialized capital, and the human and the humane and the decent populations of the world. Jazakumullahu khairan, wassalamu alaikum.